Bonjour, everybody. Welcome. I'm Derrick Belgarde, enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians of Oregon. I'm also Chippewa Cree from Rocky Boy, Montana. I'm the executive director for the Chief Seattle Club. We're a nonprofit residing here on Coast Salish lands that provides sacred space to affirm, nurture, and strengthen the spirit of our Native people. In addition to our day center next door, we have transitional shelters and housing developments that we serve our relatives with. I want to thank HUD Deputy Secretary Todman for joining us, as well as Congresswoman Jayapal, Seattle Mayor Harrell, and KCRHA CEO Marc. All is a beautiful home for our relatives, and although our space wasn't technically designed to host press conferences, it's an honor to have you all here with us today, and it's our honor and a blessing. Yeah, thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Chief Seattle Club drummers for joining us this morning. Between the 5 of them, and including myself, there's representation from 11 tribal nations. And I mention that not only to honor those people from those nations, but to demonstrate the critical role of the Chief Seattle Club and what the services we provide. Since the first days of colonization, our people have been relocated, dislocated, and traumatized in numerous ways. Chief Seattle Club's existence is a direct response to the government's termination and relocation policies of the 1950s and 60s. These policies brought people from hundreds of nations into the urban centers throughout the country, with limited to no support, with promises of upward mobility, on-the-job training, housing, and other services only to fall into poverty traps. Native people were intentionally stripped of their identity until they were forced into the streets, far from their homes, isolated, and alone. Since 1970, Chief Seattle Club has made sure that no Native person is alone or isolated anymore. For decades, most of this was focused on our day center next door, providing critical services like meals, clothes, hygiene, and case management. But we knew this wasn't enough if we're going to solve the issue. Our members have told us at different times that it wouldn't work in other housing programs and other buildings. We knew then that we needed to house our own people in a way that strengthened their identity and minimized that level of trauma. In January this year, we opened this building, 80 units here at the All building, where we provide housing for over 90 individuals. And the All, just so everybody knows, is a Lushootseed word, the indigenous language of this area, and it means home. In the coming weeks, we're opening 2 more buildings, totaling more than 130 units of permanent supportive housing between 2 different projects, one right around the corner and one off in Aurora. We know it's not enough to simply provide 4 walls and a bed, which is why we provide 24/7 supports in all of our buildings and social and traditional supports for all of our residents. This is all due to the hard work and investment at every level of government and community, and the support of everyone here today. And I'm truly honored to celebrate the success of House America, especially here in our region, and I look forward to working alongside with all of you as we continue to build sacred spaces for all of our relatives and solve this crisis. So it's my honor and my pleasure to be able to introduce the first speaker, our very own Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell. Thank you, Derrick.
Thank you, Derrick. You know, the work that we're doing right here in the All building, one can say this is where the magic happens. It's not magic. It's hard work. It's intentionality with the leaders standing behind me, with the leaders in this room. He talked about 80 units of housing right here, 90 people, 9 floors of, heck, I'll call it magic, because sometimes magic is real. Blood, sweat, and tears. And so I'm not sure what the message of that particular drum song meant, but it fired me up for some reason to fight for housing. And I want to thank Derrick for hosting us, the Chief Seattle Club, the Chief Seattle Club drummers, and everyone here this morning. This is exciting stuff we're talking about this morning. We're here today because President Biden and the HUD's House America initiative shows quite candidly a true commitment to combating the homelessness crisis by elevating the best solutions we have in housing. And so we're so grateful to have Deputy Secretary Adrianne Todman. I'll introduce her in a few moments. So grateful to have this kind of leadership here supporting what we're trying to do here in Seattle in our region. In 2022, the city's Office of Housing leveraged HUD home grants, and Michael Winklerchin is here, a strong leader that we all know, a community leader, helped us create 796 new homes in 12 buildings across 10 neighborhoods. Again, that's not magic, that's intentionality. We know we cannot be complacent in our efforts. Quite candidly, in our administration, what we proposed and what we were able to do with the collaboration with the City Council, we were able to successfully pass the largest single-year investment in our city's history in affordable housing in the budget, $250 million next year, and we invested over $95 million to address homelessness through King County Regional Homelessness Authority under Marc's strong leadership, and I know he has parts of his team here, components of his team that are also leaders here. This is a great partnership, and again, this is when systems working with the federal government, with the philanthropic community, with the RHA, with our city leaders. We created an unprecedented subcabinet, and I do apologize in advance. I have another pressing minute. I apologize to the Deputy Secretary, because when I got greatness here, I try to cling on to it, but I was supposed to be two places at once, so I want to apologize. But we created under Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington, who was directed to stay here if there are any questions from the City of Seattle. But we created a new kind of housing subcabinet. Everywhere we touch a house and everywhere we touch lives is under her portfolio, and she's just doing a magnificent job. We set a goal that all affordable housing projects will be approved within 12 months of submission. If it's a crisis, let's make sure that our regulatory framework and how we go about this reflects that kind of crisis. We put forward legislation to prevent affordable rental housing projects from design review and support faster affordable housing development. And we have to do that carefully. We understand that. But again, if it's a crisis, we behave like it's a crisis, and our policies that we implement have to reflect that sense of urgency. And last, I'll just say that under our comprehensive plan update, this is not a top-down approach. As much as I'd like to flex and say it's coming from my floor, it will not. It will come from you all, the community. It'll come from neighborhoods. It'll come from activists. It'll come from those who have spent a lifetime working on housing solutions. And that's a good segue into my introduction to our Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Adrianne Todman. You know, someone would ask, well, how do you get a position like that? You know, that's a fair question. Right now, there's a person in high school scratching their heads. How do you get that kind of job? That's, again, June 10th, 2021 was a great day. Why are you saying that? Because that was the day the Senate unanimously confirmed her position. And you do it by spending a lifetime in housing. Prior to her appointment to HUD, she served as CEO of the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials. She also serves as the executive director in the Washington, the DC Housing Authority. And under there, she increased home ownership opportunities by 50% for low and moderate income families served by DCHA. She received many national awards for her work in housing. I read her bio and I said, you know, I know a few things about you because I hope I don't embarrass you, but she went to a small, one of the best liberal arts colleges, Smith Colleges, but if you look at it, it's like a graduation rate an admissions rate like 37%. I says, well, I probably would have been in that 63% that didn't get in. But you spend a lifetime in housing. You prepare as a young person how to do this kind of work. And under the Biden administration, they're picking these kinds of leaders to fight for our communities in housing and homelessness. That's how you get the work done. So without further ado, I present to you our Deputy Secretary, Adrianne Todman.
Thank you. And a very good morning to everybody. I will say, you know, that I'm pretty sure when I was admitted to Smith, there was a 15% acceptance rate. But
They lowered it for people like me.
But I clearly digress. I digress. But thank you for that warm introduction and for your leadership. I am honored to be here. Honored to be here at this site. Honored to be here at this site. I'd like to thank the Chief Seattle Club for the amazing work that you are doing. I was so impressed to hear that you are continuing your good work with the new units that you will be bringing online. And so congratulations to you. It is magic. It is magic and hard work. You know, it was just last week I was at the White House Tribal Nation Summit, reminding tribal leaders from across the country of the investment and the commitment that HUD brings when it comes to making sure that we are taking care of something so fundamental to all of us, and that is housing. So I honor your work, and we honor the work of tribal leaders across the country. Today is a good day. Today is a wonderful day. And it's always a good day to talk about housing and home. That's always a good day, all 365 days a year to talk about housing and home. But what makes today so much more special is that we're surrounded by images and sounds that said it's the holidays, right? And when we think about, for many of us, when we think about the holidays, we think about, I'm gonna be home. Sometimes home with family, sometimes my own home. You're creating, no matter what you celebrate, you're creating a space of joy. And so what warms my heart today, and what makes it so very special, is because of the work of folks in this room and the leadership behind me, there are people, some for the very first time in a long time, who will be home for their holiday. We take it for granted sometimes that we have that. But for many people, they are home for their holiday. And I want to congratulate everybody in this room who's made that possible for the people of this community, and that deserves a round of applause. And you know, there is more work to do. There are more people to house, but it's important for us to acknowledge progress and to celebrate leadership and hard work, which is why I am here. You know, as a member of the Biden administration, we have been working very, very hard to make sure that there are federal resources that are available to meet the leadership and the need at the local level. It's one of the reasons why in the President's American Rescue Plan, we made sure that there's opportunities for there to be housing to be deployed quickly through our emergency housing vouchers, but also an opportunity to build more supply, which I know is needed here in Seattle and other places across the country by way of our home program. But then HUD took it one step further. We decided to create a community of practice, a coalition of leaders, both at the state and local level, to come together to really push each other to get housing built and to get people housed. And that is what House America is. It's a community of practice of, you know, top leadership across the country say, we're gonna get it done. And here in Seattle, you're doing that. You know, what the city committed to do was to rehouse 1,314 people experiencing homelessness and to add 772 units of housing to address homelessness. And I'm proud and pleased to be here to witness that the city has rehoused 1,225. They're at 94% of their commitments. Let's applaud that right now. But even more so, you've added 796 housing units to the development pipeline where you've exceeded your unit creation goal. So let's applaud that as well. And I know this work is not done just by one mayor. I know it's done by a whole village of well-meaning and really proud leadership. So thank you, Marc, for the work that you have done at the RHA. I want to thank all of the other housing agencies who are not here right now for the collective coming together and the centering. You know, I have crisscrossed this country more times than I want to count. And I have seen different regions try to do what you all are doing here. The partnership that I see here in Seattle, and I witnessed yesterday as a roundtable where there was philanthropic leaders, leaders of the private sector, chambers, some of the larger corporation CEOs. I saw and felt the commitment to make this work. And I will say to everybody who can hear my voice and see me, don't take that for granted, my friends. That is unique, and that is special here in this region. And it's something that I plan to talk about, Marc and Mr. Mayor and Congresswoman. When I crisscross the country, I will talk about what is happening here in this region. It is important work. HUD is committed to continuing our technical assistance as this coalescing occurs around our funds, and also making sure that the people and families of Seattle have housing they need and deserve. We recommit to our partnership to make sure that you get everything across the line and then more. We know the work is not done, and we know that more people need to be home for the holidays. And I commit to you on behalf of myself and the Secretary and all of HUD that we will continue to be your partners to that end. But I will say, we can't do it alone in the executive branch. We have a whole different part of the federal government that we count on as well to make sure that HUD has the resources and the ability to do the work that's exampled here in Seattle. So it brings me great pleasure to bring to the podium somebody who represents the work that is happening on the Hill to make sure those resources are available, your Congresswoman.
Thank you so much, Deputy Secretary Todman, and good morning, everybody. I want to start just by acknowledging the indigenous land on which we stand and the presence of the Coast Salish people, past, present, and future. I am so happy to be here, Derrick, and so happy that we're in this space, really listening to and understanding the challenges of all the people across our region, across our city, that have real problems being housed. And I think we all understand how important a home is, and I am deeply grateful for your work. Thank you so much. Over the last few years, median asking rents have increased by 17% nationally. And in Seattle, there are reports of rents increasing nearly 19% over the last year alone, which is even more alarming when you consider that every $100 increase in rent translates into a 9% increase in homelessness. Housing prices have also increased by 48%. And while housing costs continue to go up, wage growth remains stagnant. And working families in our city have to grapple with all these other soaring expenses like childcare and food and transportation. No one deserves to be driven out of a community that they grew up in because they can't afford to live here. And that is why today is so important, and why we are so proud to have you here, Deputy Secretary. We are so proud of the work that my friend and former colleague, Secretary Fudge, is doing as Secretary of HUD, for you to be able to witness the progress that we've made. This is not a requirement that people are housed. It's actually, in my view, a policy choice. It is a policy choice to leave people unhoused. And what we are trying to do under the great leadership of President Biden and Democrats in Congress is change that policy choice. Change it by actually investing in affordable housing. So at the height of an unrelenting and devastating pandemic, and under the great leadership of President Biden and Democrats in Congress, because let's not forget that every single Democrat voted for the American Rescue Plan, but unfortunately not a single Republican did. Not a single Republican did. And it's one of the most important investments that we could have made in our economy across the board, and certainly in housing, but across the board. Shots in people's arms, money in people's pockets, small businesses, the work that the city has been able to do and the state has been able to do came from money that came from the federal government. And I don't want anybody to ever forget that, because sometimes people say government doesn't work for us. Well, we are making sure under President Biden's leadership and with Democrats in Congress that we do work for the people, that government is the great equalizer of opportunity. And so I am incredibly proud of our work to pass the American Rescue Plan, which included the House America initiative. Through that bill, we provided more than $400 million worth of housing vouchers for our state, for our county, and for our city, $5 billion in grants to help people find housing, and emergency funding for Seattle to be able to provide direct resources and responses towards rehousing our city. The House America initiative speaks for itself. Together, we were able to show that we can get thousands of working families stability and safety and housing by working swiftly, decisively together at all levels of government. And I remember early in the process, right after we passed the American Rescue Plan, we had a meeting of housing providers, and Marc was there and helped us convene that. And we were underutilizing our housing vouchers at the time. And there was a direct commitment to change that. And it came from the city, it came from all of our housing providers, it came from Marc and his team to say this is not, we have to make sure we get these housing vouchers utilized. And what's happened is we are now one of the highest utilizations of housing vouchers in the country, which of course, as I've told the Deputy Secretary and anybody that will listen to me at the White House, that means we need more. Because we have shown that we can get this done. And now we need to make sure we get additional vouchers because we've got the model that works here in Seattle. And so I am so grateful to Secretary Fudge, to Undersecretary Todman for leading the charge on this response. I thank the City of Seattle, MICO, Mayor Bruce Harrell, and the King County Regional Homelessness Authority for leveraging every resource at our disposal to get people housing, which also, by the way, meant reaching out to those community groups that are directly in touch with people like the Chief Seattle Club, like immigrant organizations that serve people to help them get through the paperwork, the process to be able to get these housing vouchers out. I went and I participated in several of those, particularly with immigrant organizations, to see exactly what was needed for us to be able to deliver these resources. Because here's the thing, we in Congress can appropriate the money, we can even design certain pieces of the program, but ultimately it's up to the people on the ground to be able to deliver that in the way that we envision. So I'm incredibly grateful to all the partners in the room for their work. And as the Deputy Secretary said, the work isn't done. I'm very proud to have just been reelected as chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus again. We now will be about 50% of all Democrats in the Democratic Caucus. And when President Biden came in, we put together a list of our priorities and we surveyed our members, our 100 members at the time, I think it was 93 or something, about the priorities that people had. And I will tell you that housing was the #1 priority for everybody. And so we put it as one of our top priorities for the Build Back Better initiative. We fought like hell to get that housing investment of $150 billion into Build Back Better. We actually started at a higher number, but we're gonna keep pushing for that. And that's also why I introduced my Housing as a Human Right bill, because I really believe that if we focus on housing and home, for the holidays, yes, but for every day of the year. Everything is possible when you have a home. Your job, your employment, your ability to take care of your kids, your ability to put food on the table, everything changes when you have a home. And so we have a lot of privileged wealth here in the city of Seattle. But we have a lot of people who are moving from our city, our beloved city, because they can't afford to be here. And we are doing everything we can collectively across all of our agencies to keep up the fight in Congress, to make sure that we get the Deputy Secretary the appropriations money that we need to fund HUD. That's the big fight. That's the big fight, and let me just say something about that, because if we go to a 1-year continuing resolution, or CR as it's called, that would be a real loss for all of our agencies, because it sticks us with the funding levels from almost 2 years ago, actually, under Republican control, because we haven't been able to pass a new appropriations budget. So what we need to do is make sure that we actually fund the government to continue with these new levels, because we have new needs, and we know that it is a real challenge still for people to not just survive, but to thrive. And so with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce somebody who has been working his tail off to make sure that we have a different way of looking at what it takes to build the coalition that we need if we're going to deliver housing to every person in this region. And as I said, he was incredibly responsive when we weren't performing where we needed to go, and he didn't make a bunch of excuses. He just said, we're going to get to work on this. And he really did that, and he and all of the partners involved. And so I'm incredibly proud to have his leadership here at the regional level. Let me introduce Marc from the King County Regional Homelessness Authority.
Thank you, everyone. I will be brief. Much of what I will say has already been said, so I don't have to belabor it. I do want to go immediately off script. I'm not going to make eye contact with my communications director as I do that, and say that one of the things that I want to note is different is you just heard from only people of color. Only people whose communities are most impacted by the crisis in this nation. And I have been working on this I'm getting emotional. I've been working on this for a really long time, and I have never seen that. And it is real to say that these results have been produced by the leadership of people of color. Full stop. On script. I also, I want to thank the Congresswoman, the Deputy Secretary, Derrick, all of Chief Seattle, Mayor Harrell, Deputy Mayor Washington, Director Winkler Chen. I can't thank enough people, honestly, because this is only possible, I say this every time, when everybody agrees to do a thing together, right? I have really, really tried to ensure that the authority does not come online as some new sort of autocratic function, but is the table where this community can have the conversation to set priorities and then go in a direction together. And what we are talking about here today is proof that when we decide to do something as a community, we get shit done. That's right. That's what this is, right? We had a conversation that said we can't have 1,300 vouchers idling. They can't just go to field and, be out there, right? We got to get people into housing. We prioritize people who were literally unsheltered with that resource, right? So we didn't say, oh, we're going to, sort of prioritize transitional housing. We're going to move people. We're going to move the deck chairs. We said this critical resource at a crisis of this height must go towards those who are living outside. And then because we understood that in order to make that happen, it was about relationships, the authority executed over 80 MOUs with provider agencies to deploy those vouchers, right? Some of those organizations were not even traditional sort of homelessness or housing organizations. They were mutual aid groups. They were folks who were in the community serving people and had the relationship to ensure that a finished application would wind up with a housing authority to get somebody inside. That level of partnership didn't happen anywhere else in the country, and their numbers tell you that. And I love my colleagues. I think it's also really important to note, right, that what you see here is partnership at every level of government. It is not possible to end homelessness in this country, let alone in this region, unless we are all rowing in the same direction. And so I am incredibly grateful for Mayor Harrell's increased over baseline budget for the authority moving into next year. We will use that money sharply and strategically to continue to advance our region's shared goals. we also know that we need more, right? So going into the legislative session with the state, you can expect to hear the authority's voice at those tables saying, we can do more, we can do it quickly, but we need the investment in order to make that happen. And I share the Congresswoman and the Deputy Secretary's strong need for congressional action to fund HUD to continue to deploy the resources necessary to move the needle. We are ready in King County to house more people. If we had more emergency housing vouchers, like I can guarantee you, we will hit 100% lease up likely by first quarter of next year. And we are ready to get more people in immediately. We have a wait list now for that specific resource of unhoused folks who, drop of a hat, could be inside if we had that congressional action. And I'm very, very excited to hear that uniform call, both from our local leaders and also from the White House. Because I will also say I have been doing this for about 15 years, and I have never had the privilege of working with a White House that cared about housing. That's right. Never. The fact that I had a meeting in the White House about housing is still mind-blowing to me. Because for well over 30 years, what we all know is that it has been impossible to get concentrated federal attention on this issue, and the shift in that has made real, tangible results possible for our community members. The last thing I want to say is that I do believe fundamentally that this is a crisis and we must act urgently. I think oftentimes what we have heard is that urgency is not possible or is somehow bad because it breaks other things that are really critical to us. I think it is possible to walk and chew gum. I think it is possible to implement equity-based work, to implement justice-based work, and also do it with haste. And again, I think that emergency housing voucher program, which also brought in higher than average numbers from across anywhere in the system, folks of color, than any previously developed program, right? We can do it, right? We can make sure that our most vulnerable folks, our communities most impacted, are at the center of our work, and we can move quickly. To that end, I'm really excited to say that we continue to benefit from the incredible investment of HUD TA in our Partnership for Zero work. I had the opportunity to be there with the Deputy Secretary yesterday at the Housing Command Center meeting, where the week prior I had shared that I was not super happy with how some things were moving in terms of speed. And then I noted that when I got there yesterday, right, the team was like, oh, we did 8 matches this morning. That's 8 households who have been unsheltered, right, chronically homeless in downtown Seattle, who will be moving into housing within the next week, right? And then I had to take a step back and be like, and I want to offer praise because as a manager, I've been told I don't offer enough praise. But that kind of work, right, to rapidly accelerate pathways inside, that is the work that the authority is committed to doing, and that is the work that this partnership at all levels of government represents the possibility to make real, not just here, but in every community in America that needs it. Thank you for your time.